Okay, this is going to be a video about TNA because I have not talked about TNA on this channel for around about a month. So I decided, okay, TNA are making such a strong case to get the attention of me, the wrestling fan. So I thought I would devote some of my time to TNA before they move to Mondays, at the time when TNA's future can still be speculated on with such fierce ferocity, because we do not know if they can compete, how long they will compete for, and what the end result will be. So I'm going to talk about TNA, just some general thoughts on TNA. I wouldn't call it a rant, because what TNA has been doing since Hogan and Bischoff came in, it hasn't so much pissed me off as it's kind of like left me just a bit deadened, to be honest. It's just kind of there. It's just kind of been a lot of waiting around, in my opinion, because they have been building so strongly towards Lockdown being this great and epic pay-per-view event that it will be the big payoff to all that has happened thus far, and will make up for the fact that Genesis was average and Against All Odds was just around that average as well, even maybe a bit less than average, in my opinion. But that is a lot of pressure on Lockdown to deliver, because there's been a lot of stuff on TNA Impact that so far, like, I have not seen the most recent edition of TNA Impact, because we do not get Impact here until Saturday nights, and I've never really been that excited about an Impact show, spare a few times to actually try and find it online prior to Saturday night. Just have never really been that interested in it to do that. And by the way, on the note of TNA coverage over here, they have announced a new deal to get pay-per-views back in here on this side of the world. We didn't get Against All Odds here. I had to watch it online. They have a new deal to get the pay-per-views here now. 5-day delay. We don't get them until Friday nights now, and we used to get them on Wednesday nights. They're going backwards. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that just fine and dandy? They're going backwards now, and they should be going forwards and getting them to us sooner. But now we're getting them later. It seems like they're clutching at straws a little bit. I should probably look into the more specifics of that deal and why it was done and why the delay is so much, but I'm not going to get into that now. That's not the topic of this video. So we're talking about Lockdown and whether or not it can kind of take all that has happened for the last few months and what will happen before Lockdown in the future, and will it all converge and make Lockdown as good as it should be built up to be. Will it all be worthwhile? Will it just live up to all that has happened so far? And will all the little things that hasn't made sense so far, will it all just kind of come together in a neat, smooth fashion to make Lockdown as good as it can be? Make the build-up great, the payoff should be great, and the aftermath kind of better than what we have seen thus far. Because, like, I'm not saying that everything on TNA Impact for the last few months has been lacking in sense. There's been a kind of a few just kind of iffy things, like what is going on here, that kind of thing. But I've been willing to kind of let it roll into the next week, because, like, they're trying to be they're trying to be multi-layered storytelling. They're trying to be more story-oriented, and that's not a bad thing. So I'm willing to let a few senseless things slide and just see where it goes. I'm not gonna condemn TNA Impact for making no sense whatsoever, because that's not what's going on. But I just think that if you're going to have these little things that kind of don't make sense, you want to kind of make sure it all pays off on your big money maker, on your big targeted payoff, which is TNA Lockdown 2010. So that's a lot of pressure on TNA Lockdown. Let's see if it will deliver. This show will be headlined by AJ Styles defending the TNA X Division, not X Division, World Heavyweight Championship against Pope D'Angelo Dinero. I think Pope is a good talent, but even towards TNA Against All Odds, I thought that Mr. Anderson was going in with the most build-up. And the fact that he didn't win, kind of tells me that TNA are still set on AJ as the top heel of the company for now. They're still set on that. They didn't put Mr. Anderson in that position, which he would have ended up being in if he had won the 8-card stud tournament. So Mr. Anderson, he went in with the most build-up, in my opinion, but he didn't win, and that just tells me that they're set on AJ as the top heel for now, and they're going to build up a top face in the Pope, which is definitely good, because they need a top face. They haven't really got a top face now, I would say. They have kind of a makeshift top face in a few guys, but they don't have a really strong top face, and Pope can be that guy. They have 2 months now to convince me that Pope is going to be has a chance of winning. I'm not suggesting that he has to win. I'm just saying I'd have to believe that he could win. They have 2 months to do that, and I will give them that chance. AJ retaining the role as top heel for the foreseeable future. You know, I talked about the last time I talked about TNA. I talked about how I just disliked, in general, AJ playing Ric Flair version 2.0. I still believe that to this right now, even though he's kind of, I would say he's kind of improved a little bit, but you know, I think that if you could take a guy with 10 times the charisma of AJ Styles and give him this Ric Flair impersonation role, and you know, it could be great, but it's still not as good as the original Ric Flair. So why would you do that? Why would you put a guy in that position where he just cannot be as good as the original? He's a sequel. You know, it could be good, but in the end, you know, it won't be as good as the original. And I think they're kind of putting AJ in an impossible position, especially one who has had difficulty finding his mic skills. I wouldn't say he has absolutely horrible charisma, but you know, he's had difficulty finding his charisma and what he excels at in terms of getting himself over, not just to the Impact fans, but to the national audience that they are trying to target. And I don't think Ric Flair impersonating do too many favours, because he's not feeding off Ric Flair's energy. He's trying to replicate Ric Flair's energy, and you can try really hard to do that, but in the end you will never get the same energy that Ric Flair has. You know, I just think it's the wrong approach to take. But that's as far as AJ as the top heel goes. I think eventually they're going to just realise that they've made a mistake, and they're going to put in Mr. Anderson in there. You know, I appreciate the effort in trying to give AJ some personality and breathe some life into the character that hasn't so far not been AJ Styles. But as of now, I just think it's going to eventually suffer, I wouldn't say an embarrassing failure. I'm just going to say he's going to quietly move down and let Mr. Anderson move into that spot with no harm done in the process. And you know, the upcoming pay-per-view. The upcoming pay-per-view is Destination X, which is supposed to be an X Division themed pay-per-view, which is funny to me because I never really thought that the X Division would have a place in the direction that Hogan and Bishop want to take TNA, at least the current X Division, because to me the X Division, or a division like that, only works when you have a certain package of guys that you can believe will graduate from the X Division, so to speak, when they are ready and they can move on to better things. You know, the X Division, when they had Daniels, AJ, Joe, Sabin and Shelley, those were guys that you could believe could be on to better things. Right now, they don't have that. They don't have that right now. You know, Doug Williams is the current champion. He doesn't have that. I don't see him as the future of anything, especially with his age and the fact that he can wrestle. He can definitely wrestle, but he's not the future of anything, in my opinion. Amazing Red, you know, he's a great wrestler, but do you really see him as anything more than just an X Division guy? Yeah. The only guys in the X Division right now that I could see in that role that they could maybe go on to better things is Kendrick and, you know, maybe Lethal, but they've kind of waited too long to try and do something with him. So, you know, I don't think the X Division, the current X Division, would work, would have a place in the direction that TNA is going. It just looks too indie based, and that's not a bad thing to me because I like indie wrestling, but it's a bad thing to the audience that TNA is trying to cater for. So, you know, if Eric Bischoff is trying to revamp the X Division and kind of, you know, have more guys in there that have that kind of quality, then that's good. That's good. But I'm just kind of at a loss with this X Division themed pay-per-view because I just don't think, I never really thought the X Division has a place in where they're trying to take TNA at this moment, you know? I mean, I don't mind the X Division. I think it's like, I've seen better spotty matches in the indies now, so I don't really think of as highly of the X Division as I might have used to do. But, you know, I still think it could, if they tried to get in a few more guys that had maybe that quality with them, then it could be a more successful venture. You know, you can't bring in Jeff Hardy and put him in there because he has to be bigger than that. You can't bring in RVD and put him in there because he has to be bigger than that. So you have to find some guys like Kendrick. Kendrick's is an example. I'd say the only sure example now of a guy that could be in the X Division and could graduate from it when the time comes. You know, the Cruiserweight division in WCW had that when they had Eddie, Chris Jericho, Eddie Jericho, Ray Chavo, and a few other guys, even Billy Kidman to an extent, So you know, that's what I think about the X Division in TNA right now, and my just a bit confused at the X Division theme pay-per-view. But we'll see how it goes. It looks like a throwaway pay-per-view because they're building towards lockdown. But we'll see, we'll see. And now they are moving to Mondays. They are moving to Mondays on March 8th. And what do I think about that? I think that you know, they won't compete right away. I don't think they expect to compete right away. But will they compete at any point? You know, it just depends. You know, they're trying to go for the more reality WCW style of storytelling that will appeal to the 18 and 34 male demographic. But the thing they have to realize is, and I think Hogan knows this, and he's thinking too highly of himself, is that that demographic right now is so comfortable in its UFC grasp, and it's just so comfortable that they feel that, you know, that MMA is just an evolution of not just pro wrestling as it is today, but the concept of pro wrestling as a whole. So it'll be very hard to get that audience back to TNA and away from UFC and MMA. At least with WWE, they know what their audience is, and they